All right, so what do y'all remember about Frederick Douglass?
He's a runaway. No.
Yeah.
Oh,
He was a
he
slave?
was a runaway slave.
He was a runaway slave, so he was a slave. What else?
Wasn't he like?
He wrote books.
He wrote books. He wrote his autobiography.
He was a part of something, but I forgot what it was.
What movement?
Abolishment.
Yeah, something.
The abolitionist movement, right? So he's part of the abolitionist movement. He's going to go through, he's going to write books. His most famous book is his autobiography, right? So he writes this autobiography and it becomes a nationwide bestseller. The book actually sells not just here in the United States, but around the world. So this is going to be of benefit, and that's something that we're going to talk about today. And today we're talking about him, other people in the Civil War, and then we're even going to talk about how things were at the home front, right? So let's go ahead and jump in right now. We're talking about Civil War people today. So home front. How are things at home? Well, despite the call for equality, immigrants, women, and children are still discriminated against. We talked about some of those reasons why they were discriminated against by the nativists, right? By the U.S. citizens who were mad because what were the women, children, and immigrants doing in the factories?
Working.
They're working. But why are they getting jobs and the U.S. citizens not getting jobs? U.S. male citizens not getting jobs, I should say.
Lower pay.
Lower pay, right? If you can pay a woman $2 a week or an immigrant $3 a week versus a man that you're paying $5 a week, that's who you're going to go with. So there's a lot of unrest because of that. The nativists, the people that are from the United States, they're going to be upset that they're not getting jobs. There's a labor shortage with the immigrants coming in, and then after the Emancipation Proclamation, free African Americans are moving to the north as well, and they're willing to work for these cheap wages as well. Piled on top of that, you have the Conscription Act of 1863, which is a military draft to the Union. What is a military draft? Who knows?
You get drafted to the military.
Okay, what does that mean, though? You get drafted to the military, yes, but what does that actually mean?
Force.
To fight.
You force, right? What was that other word that we used way back? We talked about like the British. You're pressed into service, right? So you're pressed into service, and that's exactly the same thing. All the boys in here, when y'all turn 18, you will sign your selective service card. Basically,
When you're 13.
when you're 18.
Oh.
When you're 18, you're going to sign your selective service card, which basically means that if there's a draft,
I have a question. What happens
you
if
can go.
I have a question. What happens if you don't sign it?
It's a felony.
Oh, for real?
So you don't have no choice but
You
to
have no choice, yes.
You have to sign it.
You have to sign it.
And if you get drafted?
Well, first thing they're going to do, Joe, is cut that hair.
When was the last draft?
When was the last draft? It was Vietnam. Right? So if there's another world war or something like that, that you hold the potential for potentially getting drafted. Okay?
I'm glad we don't have to sign that.
How do you know? If
You're glad women don't have to sign that? You're going to do the reverse feminism here? Back in the kitchen, ladies.
Wait.
Let's not go to war.
But like, how do you know if you get drafted?
How do you know if you
So
get
do they
drafted?
send you a mail or something like that?
Well, they're going to send you something in the mail. They're going to call you. These days, they're going to track you down easier, right? They're going to start blowing you up about you getting drafted. All right. Well, the Conscription Act then has a provision to where if you pay $300, you can get your name taken out of the conscription.
Well, you can do that. You can pay to get a signal.
Not today, but back then you could with this Conscription Act during the Civil
And
War.
300 was a lot back then.
That was a lot of money back then, right? You're talking like 12,000 plus today to get your name out. Are the poor people going to have that money just lying around to remove their name? No. How are you going to feel if you're sending your husbands or your sons to die in war, but the rich people don't have to send anybody? You don't like that?
No.
No. You take that and then you add on even more violence and more arguments between the people. The Know Nothing Party, this political party that knows nothing except they hate immigrants, they hate Catholics, and they're all about the nativist policies, right? They're all for U.S. citizens. So if you're not a U.S. citizen, they don't like you. Because there's a job shortage, they're going to actually turn to violence, bless you. They're going to turn to violence in the streets. How are they going to fight for the jobs? Well, they're going to fight hands, fists, clubs, even knives. How many of y'all have seen the movie Gangs of New York? I know it's an old one, but it's actually pretty good. Right? Daniel Day-Lewis, Leonardo DiCaprio, Cameron Diaz, no? All right, well, there's a character in there called the Butcher. His nickname is the Butcher. Based on an actual guy. I don't think it was quite as severe as they make him out to be in the movie, but he's a real dude. Now, his men, the African Americans that are in the North, the immigrants, they're all going to turn to violence in New York City. And it leads to the New York City race riots of 1863, right? This is the response to the economic uncertainty, job shortages, things like that. They're going to attack the rich, and then they begin to attack each other, and then they're attacking the African Americans as well. After days of violence in the streets, the police cannot put it down. They don't have enough police officers to stop the violence. The army is too far away to send in troops to stop the violence. But the Navy's in the harbor. How do you think the Navy can get the people to stop and go back inside? What would cause you to stop and run if the Navy did what? Essentially bombing, right? So they're going to start turning the cannons into New York City. So the Navy attacks the city. All the people that are fighting in the street, when the cannonballs start falling, what are they doing? They're running away, ending the fight. The dead will be collected, and the riots will end. So violence was not just at war, in the battles, it's also going to be on the home front as well. Okay. Frederick Douglass, right? Former slave. His father most likely was his master. At the time of a young age, he was put in charge of his half-sister. When she got an education, learned how to read and write, he was there as her personal slave, essentially, as a servant. He is going to wait on her hand and foot. While she learns, he pays attention without acting like he's paying attention. Eventually, he's going to borrow some friends' papers, read the papers that say that he's free, and escape to the north. When he escapes to the north, this is going to be his chance to start a new life. He's going to become an orator and a writer. He gives speeches, and he writes books. He's going to publish his own paper, right? The North Star. He takes part in these other publications as well. He's going to write about slavery leading to an increase in the abolition movement. By telling his personal story, by telling his life story, people are going to realize how horrible slavery is, and they're going to be more willing to help the abolitionist movement. After the Emancipation Proclamation, which frees the slaves in the Confederacy, the people that are still fighting against Lincoln, he is going to encourage African Americans to fight. African Americans are going to be given roles in the Army that are military or combat roles after the Emancipation Proclamation and after he meets with Lincoln in the White House. He is going to convince Lincoln that African Americans should be given an opportunity to fight in this war. Now, they'd already fought in our previous wars as well. From the War of 1812 to the Revolution, African Americans had had a major role playing combat arms. Well, now they're going to play a role here as well. But there's an issue. We talked about how when they were originally conscripted into the military, be it by being freed by the Army in the South or by joining up, that they were given, roles of cook, cleaning, manual labor, setting up tents, tearing things down, moving things. Well, now they're going to be given combat arms. They're promised a paycheck. Do you think they actually receive that paycheck, though? No. When you get to Reconstruction, we talk about the Freedmen's Bureau. One of the things the Freedmen's Bureau tries to do is to gain back the back pay, as well as any bounties that they had accomplished during the time in the military. So he is going to have a major role, Frederick Douglass. Next person we're talking about is Stonewall Jackson. He is going to be the South's best general, in a way, right? Maybe one of the best tactical generals that we have in the United States history. The South, they don't really lose a major battle with them there, right? Antietam could be argued that, they lost, but in reality, it was most likely closer to a tie, right? From Bull Run, 1 and 2, to Antietam, to Fredericksburg, to Chancellorsville, he has a major role there. Gifted commander of troops. His troops love him, and he loves his troops, right? That book, Such Troops as These, based on him, right? He earns his nickname Stonewall at the First Battle of Bull Run. He's going to stand there like a Stonewall, and his men are going to take courage from that. Stonewall Jackson is a super religious guy. He believes in predestination, that God has already written out the entire story of his life, so he does not worry about the moment of his death, because if it happens, it was God's will, right? He doesn't concern himself with the everyday thing. Everything's already been pre-planned for him. It's one of the ways you have to operate if you're going to go to war. You either have to be like, what happens, happens, and it's out of my control, or you have to accept that you're already dead if you really want to function in warfare. He chose the former, right? The first one. Because of that, he's not worried about the bullets flying or the cannonballs. He doesn't worry about any of that because he believes it's not in his hands anyway. And in a way, it's not, right? Complete random luck plays a huge role in the battlefield, especially during the Civil War. So he fights in the first and second battles of Bull Run, Antietam, and the Battle of Fredericksburg. He is going to die, and after his death, the Confederates don't really win another major battle. He was kind of the linchpin for it. He comes up with some brilliant tactics, like moving his army in complete silence, 12 miles, to flank the enemy that was going to surround his army, right? He attacks them from a position that they didn't even know that he had moved to. They still thought he was in front of them. Well, during that battle, he rolls up their line. We talked about what that looked like. He's trying to push them as far as he can that day. Day turns to night. Well, he's still out there trying to push his army forward. Eventually, it's too dark to advance, so he's going to retreat back towards his line. And when he comes back towards his line, his men are going to open fire on him because all they hear is horses in the dark coming at him. What do you think happens? Dead. He gets shot, they amputate, amputation leads to infection, infection leads to his death. This happens before Gettysburg. If he had been alive for Gettysburg, it could have had a completely different outcome, or we might not have had Gettysburg to begin with, because he probably had the juice, the power, to convince Lee not to attack him at Gettysburg. But we'll never know because he died. William Carney, the first African American to be awarded the Medal of Honor. What is the Medal of Honor? Who knows? What do y'all think the Medal of Honor is?
So when you do something heroic in the military.
When you do something heroic in the military. Okay, yeah, it's the highest honor that our military and our government can give. And it isn't actually a long, drawn-out process, right? It's got to go through command. So your commanding officer is going to put you in for a medal, and then it works its way up. If they believe it's, important or valiant enough or brave enough, they'll send it up to Congress. If Congress approves, it goes through the houses of Congress, it'll go to the president, and the president has to approve and sign off on it. And after that, you will be awarded with the medal. And it takes years. Okay? We have several Medal of Honor winners that live here in Texas. In Austin, you can see Dakota Mayer, and he's up there with his Medal of Honor. Well, I don't think he actually holds it. I think he gave it to his daughter to use as costume jewelry, but he earned that, right? He was awarded that, I should say. You don't win it, you're awarded it. So he's the first African American to be awarded the Medal of Honor. He was in the 54th Massachusetts Regiment during the Civil War. He was referred to as the 54th Massachusetts Colored Regiment. Why would it have that designation as a colored regiment? What do you think that meant? African American, exactly. That was how they designated that these were African Americans that were doing the fighting during this battle, or in that regiment. The officers, however, were all white. Despite being promised a wage, they were not paid. When a sergeant was killed, he is going to pick up the flag, right? So during this battle, which he gets it, right, Fort Wagner, he's going to have a sergeant killed, he's going to pick up the standard, and he's going to charge into the fort, right? Getting hit along the way, he doesn't stop, right? He plants the flag, urging his men forward. They storm into the fort, the battle takes place. The Confederates have the upper hand, and they're going to push the Union soldiers back. When they're retreating, he picks up the flag and he runs it back, getting wounded more times as he retreats back. When he gets there, I believe his final words were something like, "Boys, the whole flag never touched the ground." Despite being torn through the arms, legs, I want to say he even got one in like the abdomen or chest, he never let the flag touch the ground. All right? Dedication. And that dedication, because of everything happened, he is going to be awarded the Medal of Honor. And it doesn't happen during the Civil War. It doesn't happen even in the remaining years after that during Reconstruction. It is a long time after that he is recognized for his actions during the war. So William Carney, the first African American, the first Black Medal of Honor winner. Okay. Next person we're talking about is Philip Bazar. Bazar is Hispanic, first Hispanic to be awarded the Medal of Honor. He was born in Chile. He's an immigrant, right? So he came from Chile to the United States. So an immigrant and he's Hispanic, right? Medal of Honor recipient. He was stationed on board the USS Santiago de Cuba, which was an unarmed steamboat during the assault on Fort Fisher in January 15th of 1865, right? Why would you probably not want to be on an unarmored boat during a battle to try and take a fort?
Because what if you like drop in the water or something?
Yeah, what if you get hit, right? Where are you going to end up?
The water.
In the water, right? Do you think the steamboats had really thick walls, giving you a lot of protection? No, the musket balls are going to rip through it. The cannonballs are ripping through it, right? By the end of the battle, it's going to look like Swiss cheese. But they're going to communicate. They're going to send messages and dispatches. They're the carriers for this time period. They're communicating with the Navy out on the water, and they're even going to pull in close to shore, disembark, and communicate with the Army on land, right? They are going to be the linchpin. Remember, this is a time before you can pick up a radio and call in what you needed. So he's got to communicate with all these different things. He and his men are doing this on an unarmored steamboat. Very dangerous. They put themselves in constant danger, and because of that, he is going to be awarded, and his men are awarded the Medal of Honor for their actions. So the first Hispanic Medal of Honor here. All right. The last person we're talking about, Hiram Ulysses Grant, otherwise referred to as Ulysses S. Grant, which is actually not his name. His name was Hiram Ulysses Grant. The story goes is that he received some type of promotion inside the military or a commendation that had the name Ulysses S. Grant instead of Hiram Ulysses Grant, so he just went with it. Right? This is what the Army wanted it to be called, so that's kind of what he's called. He was a general-in-chief of the Union Army. We talked about his issues beforehand. Why was he not seen as somebody who was trustworthy? Why did they not give him command of the army to begin with? Who remembers? What problem did Grant have that everybody knew about?
Drinking.
Drinking, right? He was a drunk. You don't want that kind of guy in command of your army because that's a liability, right? That's the way that they saw him. But during the war, he just kept winning and winning and winning. Siege of Vicksburg, he cracks the enemy, takes that surrender, and he basically gives the Union control of the Mississippi, splitting the Confederacy in half. Well, he's going to launch total war. He gives Sherman the order to burn Georgia to the ground. He's going to defeat the Confederate Army in Virginia, accepting Lee's surrender at Appomattox Courthouse. He is this general. That's a major hero. What's the next step for that? Who remembers? Usually if you're a general that's a hero, you go on to become a what?
A general that's a hero?
A general that's a hero. You're a war hero that's a general. Usually people are going to like you, so you become a what next?
President.
A president, right? We saw it all the time. Washington, Jackson, Zachary Taylor, Ulysses S. Grant. So he's going to take over as presidency, right? We're going to talk about his presidency when we talk about Reconstruction and Radical Reconstruction in the next unit when y'all get back from spring break. But this is something that you have to know, right? He launched total war in the South. What do you think his feelings and opinions are going to be about the South when he takes over as president? Bad, right? If he's willing to burn the South to the ground, to destroy everything that they love, right? Not just kill them, but kill their lifestyle, everything about them, he's probably not going to be very compassionate when it comes to Reconstruction after the war, but we'll get to that in a few weeks, okay? So, every year, these are tested on your STAR test. Well, how have they been tested in the past? This is an example here. All right, gives you something like this, the things you want to look at. This, y'all have all done, right? So Ulysses S. Grant, and it's going to list things that he's done in the past. He graduated from the U.S. Military Academy at West Point. He served during the Mexican-American War. He did something else, and then he was the 18th president. What was that something else that he did?
Oh.
So he commands the U.S. military during the Indian Wars. Is that something that we had talked about?
H.
H. He was appointed General-in-Chief of the Union Army during the Civil War. Yes, right? So that would be the correct answer. Okay? So that's one way it's been tested. Another way it's tested is like this, right? Where you have to match up what they did with who they are, right? So Jefferson Davis, did he write the words to the Battle Hymn of the Republic?
No.
No. right? So that wasn't him, right? He didn't write the poem, John Brown's Body. Ulysses S. Grant, was he the one that issues out the Emancipation Proclamation?
Yes.
Got some yeses, got some nos. We'll leave this as a maybe. All right, Julia Ward Howe. Did we talk about her at all?
No.
No. Okay. Philip Bazar. Did he become the first Hispanic American to be awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor for his bravery at sea?
Yes.
Yes. All right. So go through, get rid of the ones that you don't know until you can limit it down, and then choose the best answer from there. All right. Well, how else is this kind of thing been tested? Been tested pretty standard, right, so far. Well, just like it was the main idea to the sub-boxes, sometimes the sub-boxes to the main idea. So this person was a member of the all-black 54th and 55th Massachusetts Colored Regiment of the Union Army. They became the first African-American soldier to be awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor. Takes place in the assault on Fort Wagner, South Carolina. Which individual belongs in the space? So who goes here? All right, is it George Whitefield, William Carney, Philip Bazar, or Hiram Revels? So who was the first African-American soldier to be awarded the Medal of Honor? And he was
George.
B.
George Whitefield. Did we talk about George
Yeah.
Whitefield?
I'm gonna see.
Current.
I'm gonna see. Yeah.
You're going to see Philip Bazar. Take a look at your notes.
It says medal. How was that medal of honor?
Yes.
Okay, so but you're looking for the black first African American. Not C, Philip Bazar.
It's B.
It's B, William Carney. All right, that's why we do these, so that you understand where you're making your mistakes. Okay. All right. So sometimes it's tested just like a regular word problem. The biography on the military career of Thomas Stonewall Jackson would include his involvement in which Civil War events? So was he at the First Battle of Bull Run and the Confederate victory at Fredericksburg? Got some yeses, got some nos. We'll put that as a maybe. Did the Union capture Atlanta and march to the sea through Georgia? Was it Jackson's march to the sea?
No, that was Grant.
Well, Grant orders it, but it was Sherman, okay? Does the Virginia Peninsula campaign and the Union victory at Gettysburg, was he there?
No.
No. The campaigns in Northern Virginia and the Confederate surrender at Appomattox Courthouse? No, right? Because what happened to him? He died, right? So the only answer it could be would be the first one. First Battle of Bull Run and the Confederate victory at Fredericksburg. Okay. Now here's a different one for an event that we talked about yesterday. So this one, you got to use your map skills. I know in y'all's interim assessment, y'all had some major problems with the maps, right? So, when you see a map, what kind of things do you want to look at?
The key.
The key, right? That's going to be a thing to look at. What else should you look at?
Geography.
Dates, right? The title. So Virginia Spring, 1865, so we know it's towards the end of the war. You want to take a look at the source, maybe even your compass rose, and then try and understand. So Lee's forces are going to be the dotted line. We see them go from Petersburg over here, and then finally ending up at Appomattox Courthouse. Grant's forces, the solid line. You see them kind of come together, and they're both going to come together at Appomattox Courthouse. Well, so you need to know what happened there. What was the What was the result of the events shown on the map above? What happens when Lee and Grant arrive at Appomattox Courthouse?
Hey. Somewhere.
Do they start a war? Is there a battle here?
Oh no.
No? So, okay, so we can probably get rid of that. Does General Lee's troops receive the necessary reinforcements? Are General Grant's supply lines completely cut off? Does Lee surrender to Grant? Or does Grant and Lee combine forces? No, so they don't do that one. Okay, I'm getting a lot of no's there. What other one can we get rid of? F. Okay. So at Appomattox Courthouse, either Grant's supply lines are cut off or Lee is going to surrender to Grant. What happens at Appomattox Courthouse?
H.
H. Okay. All right. What I'm doing right now is I am going to hand out your review for your next unit test. which will be when we get back from spring break. Hopefully you'll actually go through and do some of this work during that time.
Spring break.
Wait, I have a question.
Spring break is next Friday.
Why don't you just
We'll be
record the thingy, but like on your own time? Like, why do you have to do it in class?
On my own time, so you want me to take another class period to record
Well, that's true. I didn't think about that.
for both 7th and 8th grade, so you want me to take another 2 hours to do this?
Do all classes have to do this?